Go ahead. Hello, everyone. Again, I would like to thank ANFA for allowing us to present our research. And I'm Dr. Lenny Scott Weber, and I'm with InSync, Education, Research, and Design. And my colleague is Rachel French. And we're going to do a little tag teaming here. So that's what we're going to do. I wanted to share with you that Jim French, the global sector leader for K-12 for DLR Group, could not be here today. But it was really his inspiration to do this kind of research to, again, as an architectural firm, trying to understand, is what we're doing, can we prove that in fact is working? So that's part of what we're going to share with you today. And I'm going to pop this off. I can do it.
All right. Oh, I was told to pin this or else, I don't know, bad things happen. Okay. All right, so we're going to start with the why, as one should. And the why here is actually pretty simple. Like in any context, whether it be a workplace or your hobbies or school, engagement is important. It links to many different variables and different outcomes. And I think we can all agree, regardless of standardized test scores or other things that might be more hot button, that we want students to be engaged. And we want the educators to also be engaged in what they do every day. Another reason why this topic is so timely is that I really enjoyed the conversation earlier about the shifting archetypes, right? And schools are one in which the archetype of what a school looks like is vastly different and is ever evolving. And so it's a really critical juncture in which we should look at how our facilities really relate to the learning and engagement that's going on inside. And in the spirit of measurement tools, we didn't want to just talk about engagement being important. We really wanted to find a way to measure it in our facilities and create this ongoing post-occupancy measure that we can apply in our evidence-based design process. We targeted for now grades 9 through 12. There's some existing work done in higher ed, and we definitely use that to apply down to this new level. And our main research question is really, can we demonstrate that the design of the built environment for grades 9 through 12 impacts student academic engagement levels? And we, again, as I mentioned, we wanted this to be a tool that's really going to outlive itself. So reliability and validity were incredibly important. So we engaged in kind of the full academic rigorous process in creating a survey. And our first step was actually working with Dr. Lenny here to kind of distance us as an architecture firm, to kind of distance any of that, illusion that we're, really trying to fix the results. We wanted it to be very, very rigorous. And we worked with a statistician across the entire process as well. So we had the expertise to really make sure we were incorporating all the existing work that's been done in student engagement and active learning into this measure. So we worked with a convenient sample of high schools and across every step. So they were all DLR group projects, just because that's easy and convenient, and they were all newer spaces. So when we're talking about these new archetypes, most of them fit that model. For the first alpha phase, and there's publications available for all of the, for the alpha and the beta, and we're working on the omega. So just Google it. I think it's in the European Scientific Journal. Is that right? Yeah. Anyway, so for the alpha, we worked with one high school, and we did observations, we did interviews with the teachers, the students, the administrators. We worked with the design team to really make sure that we were encompassing all the different elements of both the design and the engagement and what that looks like. So we moved on and did a beta, and again, between each of these rounds, we would do iterations and change and tests and work with our statistician. And as you see, we have a nice progression of sample sizes as we move from the alpha to the beta to the omega. And all in, we ended up having just shy of 4,000 students and over 500 teachers. And what I didn't really articulate earlier is that what evolved throughout this process is that there really is need for both a student engagement index and an educator or teacher engagement index, because while there's many things that overlap, there are also some different nuances that we wanted to really measure when you're looking at both teachers' own engagement and their perceptions of the students being engaged. And now I'm going to toss it back to talk through the...
Okay. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Okay. Gets a little challenging. It's not going to work, not fall off. So I'm going to share with you today some selected findings. And as Rachel indicated, the majority of these questions are not just developed from the work that we did on the qualitative side of trying to understand, but also they're all grounded on the user's environmental interaction framework, which was first published in 2000. So what we have here is, again, a major goal of trying to scale any tool is to make sure that it's reliable and valid, so that any of the architects, and as the practice goes on and they want to be able to use this post-occupancy, they have that availability to do that and know that they don't have to change things. All of the questions have been vetted, and so I'm going to also share a little bit of the qualitative information that we did in the beta study. This was all analyzed through in vivo. What you see on, I'm dyslexic, so I have to turn around, on that side, is this sort of what I call the smile. So you really start to see the differences between what the student indicates is important in the blue and what the educator thinks is important, which is in the orange-red kind of color. And not that they are clashing, but it really does start to show the focus from one side to the other. And then the other question that we had a lot of input on was where the education was taking place. Where's this learning? The new environments for the K-12 arena in particular have all of these wonderful designs and places, breakout spaces, collaborative zones, outdoor areas for teaching, as I was just talking to my colleague from Ball State, and yet where is it happening? It's still in the classroom. So we have a tremendous amount. It's one thing that we haven't talked about at this conference is behavioral conditioning. What is the condition that's happening to the students who might prefer to sit in an amphitheater rather than, get involved in doing things perhaps in a lab or in some other environment? So the question becomes, should we be designing those? Should we be designing, classrooms that are larger that enable these kinds of things? There's still some questions, I think, that need to happen. We had some success in terms of our statistical findings that the kinds of things that I'm going to share with you today were all statistically significant at a pretty good P level. And a couple of things that, again, remember this is self-reporting, it's in a survey instrument, it's online. One of the things that we found was that the students really did cognitively understand that the building's design affected them, and affected them to the point that they believed that when they agreed that the design was appropriate for them, then they had a higher level of engagement. And also that they really felt that they had a strong association with understanding that that building's design was important to them. In fact, they had it at a higher level than the educators that we serve. So we thought that was kind of interesting. What I thought was really key about this, we've now done 11 schools across the US, and not European or other parts of North America, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter the schedules, it didn't matter the types of students, it didn't matter gender, it didn't matter geographically, it didn't matter what grade the teachers were teaching or what grade the students were in. The design of space, as self-reported by both the students and the educators, say that their perception that student academic engagement performance was increased significantly, and that's statistically. A couple of things I want to share with you that are sort of a little nuances that we were looking at. In an active learning environment, one would expect you to be active, that there's going to be some movement in being able to work on things. And so one of the things that we looked at is this movement scaled, and this is one of the items, and you can see the trajectory is moving from low to high. That they really believe that students really believe that movement was important for them, and they wanted to make sure that the schools facilitated their ease of movement. And if so, then they tended to believe that they had higher values of academic engagement. When we think about the correlation analysis, and one way ANOVA was done, and again, statistical significance, the students who believed that if they could move around in their classrooms, so we looked at these two sort of spaces, the overall large spaces and the classroom spaces, that they really believed that this was important for them. So when students began to recognize that when they are allowed to move or given permission, as I always say, I give permission to move, then it's important for them to do that. We had some environmental qualities that we looked at as well. Two things that I'll point out, and somebody in the last day or so has mentioned it. Temperature control was a challenge at every single school. So I'm not sure. I'm freezing in here. Other people are too warm. Temperature is a real interesting issue. And the affordances with the students in the seating, they didn't like it as much as the teachers thought they did. So at my PhD is in environment behavior psychology, and what that research would say is that space impacts behavior, and behavior begets culture. And so one of the things we have to think about is, what is the culture that we're trying to design for? And then what are those intentional behaviors? And then how do we design for that? And I'm just going to share quickly, because we've got about 5 minutes, but some of these perceived values. Students care about the culture. Faculty care about the culture. And this is based on basically the 21st century learning skills. So they want to know that their school is going to allow them to be creative, allow them to be critical thinkers and collaborate, and they have permission to do so. That had a very high R-squared or regression on this. The same as it relates to a sense of belonging. How do we connect with our peers and teachers? I feel like I'm a part of this place, and can I move around and have access to these affordances? Really important for the students. And the teachers, not so much. The teachers, we've got a whole write-up that we'll be doing, as Rachel mentioned, for this journal, that the educators are really struggling with the culture at the schools. And so if it doesn't hit for them, it's not going to make them happy. And in terms of the motivation and avoidance and approach scenarios, we have, again, very high p-values for student perception of that they're motivated to come to school. They want to be able to work hard. They want to get higher marks. And then we had the teachers think about their students and what that perception was. And again, you see the similar kind of scores here. And then we asked teachers another set of questions about themselves and their work areas and what that meant for them. And the qualitative pieces of this, there's a lot of nuances in there that really come down to, if the culture's great, I'm great. If the culture isn't great, I'm going to be somewhat challenged, but still some pretty high p-values. And tag teaming with this thing is interesting. Okay.
Awesome, thanks. So just to wrap up, as I mentioned earlier, the goal was to really make this be a tool that we can integrate into our regular post-occupancy work and inform other projects. So kind of one of our first things is we have this research team that has created this tool, but now we need to really create something that any designer within our firm can deploy. So we're kind of working on that element, which is really more with the analytical side. And then we're also going to be distributing and disseminating different research insights and design principles from the initial findings. In addition, knowing that grades 9 through 12 is only less than a third of the population that we're trying to really reach in terms of this shift, we're going to be creating an additional student engagement index for the grades 6 through 8 population. So that is our next endeavor that we're going to start on this year. And thank you.
Very interesting. I'm sure we have some questions from the audience. I'd like to ask you, what did media have to do in your analysis? How important was that for the students that they had personal media and smartphones, all those kinds of things? How did that fit into any of this?
Yeah, we looked at that in a whole technology section,
Yes.
and so that was very important to them. The more important thing was having plug-ins, having Wi-Fi, being able to plug in, because it's all personalized instruments that they're
Right.
bringing.
I mean, that's been a huge
Yeah.
change in the
Yeah.
last, 8 years, something like that. Any questions?
Thank you all.
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
you had a question? Sorry.
The idea of education, and if our education is actually where we need to be, or do we need to think about how we're educating and
Oh, we have a
incorporate
whole
that?
nother conversation on that one, Sweet Pea. Absolutely. Education should be thrown out the window, and we need to start over. You really want my
Right.
opinion. Okay.